you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today is going to be the update to the Simplar build for the Summerset chapter. This is actually the Stamina Templar build. Now the whole point of this build is to have high survivability, high damage, high sustain, and of course be as easy as possible to use. So it's got a very simple rotation. The gear is either craftable or acquirable via guild traders or overland, and of course there is a monster set and shoulders if you want to use that, but you don't have to. So first of all, I'm going to go into the stats. Let's pop a potion first of all, make sure we've got everything ready. 19.5k health, which is massive. 39.7k max stamina. You can get 40k if you gold everything out, but it's not really that important. Just over 1k stam recovery, which is really nice. 64.5% crit, which is crit chance, by the way, not damage. 4.2k weapon damage, which goes a bit higher with our weapon damage glyph that we're using. And of course, 13k resist for spell and 10k, almost 11k for physical. 64 points into stamina, max health, max stamina food, and a thief Munderstone. Because, of course, the Templar, when I get to the passives, this will make a bit more sense, but they do excel at crit, so you want to make sure that they've got plenty of it so that the damage is higher. Also, Vampire Stage 4. That's very important. That's going to be in the passive section also. Now, first of all, I'm going to go over the skills. These are going to be in a lot of detail, so I wouldn't advise skipping them, because otherwise you're going to miss out on some really important stuff. And then, obviously, I'll go into the passives afterwards to make sure this makes a lot more sense. So, first of all, we'll go with Deadly Cloak, which is in the Dual Wield skill line. This is a 4th ability you unlock. It takes a bit of time, so you might want to put a couple of these on your bar to start with, just to level up the skill line. But what this does is basically coat you in a aura of daggers, and they do damage once every 3 seconds to all enemies nearby. Also, at the same time as being active for damage, it also gives you protection. So any AoE damage that you take, any area of effect, will be reduced by 25%, which is absolutely massive. This did get a slight damage reduction in Summerset, but it's still very strong indeed. Now, the second ability is Rearming Trap, and this comes from the Fighters Guild skill line, and it is the ability you unlock at level 8 in Fighters Guild. So you want to make sure you kill plenty of undead, Daedra, werewolves, all that kind of stuff. Dolmen killing as well is very fast for leveling up this particular skill line, but make sure you obviously acquire it when you first go to your main town areas from the Fighters Guild themselves. Now, you'll get Rearming Trap, which is a morph from Beast Trap. What this does is it puts a trap on the ground, and of course any target caught inside of that will be immobilized for 6 seconds and take physical damage for 6 seconds. It's a damage over time ability. At the same time as that, it will also grant you Minor Force, which is a buff type, and that will give you 6 seconds worth of increased critical damage. So your crit chance is what we went over in the stats very briefly, but this is crit damage. So if you do crit via that chance, it will be improved via this buff. Now, of course, it rearms. It's Rearming Trap. So once it finishes, it will rearm itself straight away, and you get another 6 seconds. So this actually lasts for 12. Just note, of course, bosses can't be immobilized, but the trap does still go off, it does still do damage, and you'd still get the buff as well. It's very powerful indeed. Now, Circle of Protection is actually here as a bit of a flex slot, but it's also here for base stats. Now, this is going to make more sense when I get into the Fighters Guild skills for passives, but just remember that this is here for stats only. However, if you've got enough sustain, which you will have, you can actually utilize this. When you put it down on the ground, it protects you and anyone inside of here for 8% of the damage done to you, because it gives you minor protection, and of course it gives you 10% increased stamina recovery, so for anyone else who's in here as well. So it's a buff, it's a bit of a mitigator for damage, but above all, you don't actually have to use it. You can just leave it on the bar and it will give you a bonus anyway. Again, I'll go over that in the passives. However, if you don't want to use that ability, you can go into Dual Wield skill and get the third one down, which is Steel Tornado. This is situational, of course, because if you've got a really big target with loads and loads of health, you probably aren't going to use it so much. But if you've got loads of enemies around you and your group has got high damage and they're dying fast, you can do a bit of spinning to win. Now, it's expensive. Any enemy caught by that will take direct damage, and a lot of it, but it does more damage the lower the target's health. Up to 100% more damage if they're really low. So only use this in situations where things are dying fast and you can finish them off. It's an execute. But passively, if you're not using that, keep on Circle of Protection. It's really nice for your passive stats. But again, like I said, we'll get to that. Now, Bite and Jabs is in the Adric Spear skill line, first Templar ability skill line. Now, this you want to morph into Biting Jabs specifically, so it has a stamina morph. Now, this does some stabbies in front of you. every hit of that will hit the targets in front of you. Small area of effect area damage, and all of the targets will get hit for X amount of damage, but the one at the very front will get hit for the most. Now this isn't buffed up, so this isn't 100% accurate, but 1.5k to all enemies every stab, but almost 4k to the one at the front. So the main target get hit for the most. At the same time, of course, this does snare the enemy, which isn't really important, but it does give us a crit bonus. 2191 crit chance. Now I know it's in stats and not percentage, so that's confusing, but it's about 10%. We get major savagery for having this ability active. So every time you cast it, you get 8 seconds worth of major savagery. You see that little axe there, the buff timer? If I do it again, it reapplies. It stays with us all the time. So make sure you use this as your main spammable. It's really important. You are going to use this a lot, and make sure that you position yourself so that you actually hit more than one target if you can. Now, the next ability is Blood Craze. This is in the dual wield skill line. It's the second ability you unlock, and this is morphed to Blood Craze from Twin Slashes. Now, this will hit the target for initial physical damage, like 2.6k of it, which isn't massive, but it's not too bad. I mean, it hits rend and slashes. That initial hit does a little bit more, but the bleed this does goes through resistances. It lasts for 9 seconds, and the bleed on this particular morph and the bleed on rend and slashes are identical. There's no difference. But this particular morph, losing the initial hit slightly, you do actually get to heal for 1.2k every 2 seconds. Heal and receive bonuses and all that kind of good stuff also stacks up on top of this, so it can be quite a substantial heal. It's really nice for your sustain and damage at the same time. So attach this to the target. It's just a single target dot on the main target that you're hitting, but if you apply it on more than one target, they can all have it. So you don't just press it and then put it onto another one and it disappears off the first one. You can put it on as many targets as you like. However, keep this in your rotation and cast it once every rotation, and when I get to that part of the video, that will make a little bit more sense. But this is really nice. Keep it on something at all times so you get that heal. Flawless Stormbreaker, this is our main ultimate on our front bar. We don't actually use it, we just use it for stats. It does damage in area of effect in front of you for 10 meters, so it's quite a long ranged ability considering it's melee based. Also, it adds a damage over time effect to all targets caught in it. But above all, this actually gives us 5% increase to our weapon damage just for being on the bar, and that's what we want it for. We don't want to use it as a damage ability, we want it for the damage bonus. So keep that on your bar at all times. It's level 10 in Fighters Guild. You do have to morph this to Flawless Dawnbreaker specifically to get that bonus. It does have another bonus as well, but we'll get to that in the passives. Back bar, Resolving Vigor. This is in the Assault skill line. It's the third ability you unlock if you don't include the ultimate, so second, I guess. What you need to do is go into PvP, Cyrodiil, Imperial City, the sewers, or Battlegrounds, and get Alliance points, because Alliance points contribute towards increasing your Assault and Support skill lines. When you get Vigor, morph it into Resolve and Vigor, and away you go. Now this is a typical heal. 5-second duration. Every 1 second you will heal. And everyone caught inside of that as well, up to 6 people including yourself. Now just remember that it is a duration based heal. Once a second. Don't spam this like this, because you're just going to run out of stamina. All you're doing is reapplying it for no good reason. Reapply it when it runs out or when it's on its last second. So here, it goes down to 0. You can put it on again if you really want to, but don't spam it. Now the trick to that, I know people are screaming, oh my god, I don't want to go to PvP. Don't panic. You don't have to go into Cyrodiil, you can do Battlegrounds. And the reason I suggest that is because it's a lot easier to get points. If you're in Cyrodiil and you're in the middle of a Zerg, you might get loads and loads of points and unlock this really quickly. But what happens if you can't find a fight? Or what happens if you're dead all the time and you're not getting any points? Well, Battlegrounds, you can queue up for a random battleground using the activity finder, and even if you lose, your team will still get alliance points. So if you feel like you're not comfortable in PvP, or you don't feel you're that good, or you're up against pre-maze all the time and you're constantly getting your ass handed to you, don't worry. If you lose, you get points. So while they're running around on your corpse laughing at you, laugh back, because you're now leveling up this skill line. Really simple way to do it. Now, bow, here we go. Poison injection. This takes a long while to unlock, so you need some other abilities on your bar while you're leveling. But morph poison arrow into poison injection. This shoots the target with a single arrow and adds a 10-second poison damage over time ability to the target. Now, of course, this does damage passively anyway, just for hitting them, but the lower their health, the stronger this gets. Up to 260% more aggressive. So, while the target's under 50%, it gets stronger and stronger the lower their health is. It doesn't mean just put it on the target when they're low health. It means put it on them all the time, but passively it will get stronger. It's very powerful. Power of the Light. This is in our Dawn's Wrath abilities. Now what you need to do, of course, you might need a couple of these on your bar to level up to get to here. So the third one you unlock. It starts off as Backlash. Morph it into Power of the Light. Now this will put a nice beam on the target from the air. Let's use this imp. Like that. Now it hits initially for physical damage. And then after 6 seconds it will explode. Now, obviously it didn't do any damage. But what it does is it counts up the damage that you do while it's active. And then pops. Now, what this ability actually does, apart from the initial hit and after the 6 seconds it pops, it actually stacks up damage that you've done while it's active on the target. It will save 20% of the damage you've already done to the target and mount it up in a little pot. And then once the 6 seconds is over, boom, it explodes. Up to 23822. Now there is set in stone. That's a flat number. You can't crit it. It's how much it will do when it fires off. Now, all you need to do while it's on the target is keep hitting the target. The more damage you do, obviously the more it will stack up until that final point, and then it will pop. Now it does have another bonus as well. While it is active, the target affected will be debuffed with Minor Fracture and Minor Breach, reducing their physical and spell resistance by 1320 for 6 seconds, so the whole time it's active. Meaning anyone that hits it will do more damage, as long as it's not already capped anyway. So it's really, really helpful. You must keep us on a target inside your rotation as much as possible. So when you're on your back bar, we usually fire it, but I'll get to that later on, and it'll make a bit more sense. Really, really solid ability. But you must be doing damage. Don't just put it on a target for no reason. Where the hell's the next one? Restoring Light, Repentance. This was Restoring Aura to start with. Morph it to Repentance, and then what you'll get is while it's on your bar, so our back bar only because we don't have it on the front, you gain Minor Fortitude, Minor Endurance, and Minor Intellect, increasing all 3 recovery bonuses by 10%, Health, Magicka, and Stamina. So it's really nice. But also, if you activate this, within 12 meters, if it's a dead body there, you will kind of consume their soul, if you like, and get health back and stamina. Now, the health bonus is also for the group. You can actually heal the group with this based on how many dead bodies are on the ground. You can do 6 at a time and then recast it if there's more. But the stamina bonus is for you. You actually get back almost 3k stamina for every single target that you consume, if you like. So let's see if there's a dead body somewhere. Or there will be, because we're going to kill something. There's an imp or something small. Perfect, there's nothing to kill. Something to kill. You'll do. This dude over here. Now, he's dead. Watch. Health back, stamina back. Very, very nice. Now, if you have more targets, let's try and grab a couple. If you have more targets, you can do it to more enemies at once. So we'll grab you. Grab you. Is there any more? Any more imps? You. Put them all together. Hopefully he's not out of range. 1, 2. See there? 2 targets. You can go up to 6, and then if there's, say, for example, 12 bodies on the floor, you can take 6, and then take 6 again. They remember which ones you've consumed, so you can't do the same one twice. Also, if there's another Templar in the group, you can't repent the same one that they've already done. Really, really powerful. Nuts for sustain, and keeps you alive. Essential stuff. Now, bow skills again. We've got Endless Hail. Second ability to unlock. Keep this on the ground at all times. It is incredibly powerful. It does physical damage to all targets caught inside of this. Where's the... You can have it. All targets caught inside of that take damage every half a second. You can see he's dying rapidly. Ignore that fireball. That's separate. We'll worry about that in a minute. Now, if you have the Maelstrom weapon as well, it gets even stronger. So I would highly recommend farming for that if you can. If not, get some practice in. You never know. You might get lucky. But it's really, really strong dot. You must keep it on target at all times. Now, the ultimate that we do use is in Adric's Spear, and it's called Crescent Sweep, morphed from Radial Sweep. It does... Have I got any ultimate? That, and everything caught in front of it will take damage. And then, damage every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. It's really, really powerful, but the target at the very front will get hit for much, much more damage, up to 66% more than the initial hit. So really, really powerful. Now, this is also extremely cheap. 72 ultimate is nothing. We can use this every second rotation as long as our rotation is clean. So we have really high uptime on this. Dawnbreaker is a bit more expensive. We don't use this. We use this one. Now, I'm going to get into the passives, and a lot of this is going to start falling in place, especially the Adric's Spear stuff, and of course the Fighters Guild stuff. So, let's go into Adric's Spear first of all. Make sure you get these as soon as possible. They do help with everything, but above all, I'm going to go through them and explain what they do. Increases your critical damage by 10%. Remember I said that we need to crit as a Templar? We have high crit chance, and we passively have increased critical damage. So if we do crit, it hits harder. And of course, we're using a Beast Trap, which also gives us more crit damage as well. So the two stack together quite nicely. It's not 10% and 10% making 20. Crit damage is multiplicative depending on how much you've actually got, but it does increase it nonetheless. So it's very, very nice. Now, this obviously increases the damage you can block by melee attacks. You do want to make sure that you're blocking if you get hit by melee attacks. Of course, we're squishy. We don't want to die. So make sure you do block. Also, another point here, while targets are blocking, you do 10% more damage. So you go through shields. It's really, really nice. Not damage shields, I mean blocking. Also, we have an ability here which is essential. While doing damage with Adric's Spear abilities, you have a 25% chance every half a second to do almost 6k physical damage. Now, I know it says magic damage as well, but it's whichever's highest. We're physical based, so obviously that one's for us. Now, what this means is, this ability here, while doing damage, every half a second can proc that free damage. And our Crescent Sweep as well, that also applies. So those two abilities, while both active, have an equal chance of applying that free damage once every half a second. It's really, really powerful. You've got to get that passive. Also increases our weapon damage by 6% and our spell resistance by 2640. So we have more spell resist, and of course we have more flat weapon damage, which is very, very helpful indeed. Dawn's Wrath, we're obviously using one ability, so not all of these are going to apply to this. That one isn't relevant unless you use a Nova. Save that for another video. This is essential, of course. Every time you use Power of the Light, you will gain 3 ultimate as long as you haven't done it more than once every 6 seconds. So if you fire it once every 6 seconds, you get 3 ultimate every time. And if you fire it once every 12 seconds, you'll still get 3 ultimate just for firing it anyway. As long as you don't try and spam it twice in the same 6 seconds, you get 3 ultimate every time. Casting Dawn's Wrath ability grants minor sorcery to you and your group, for you and 5 other members, for 20 seconds, increasing your spell damage by 5%. We're not using spell damage, but other people are, so you actually buff the group for firing off your Power of Light for 20 seconds. We use it once every second rotation, so we can actually keep this up almost 100% of the time. It's very, very useful indeed. Also, this reduces the cost of Magicka, Stamina, and Ultimate abilities. It's very, very important that we can really utilize this skill once every second rotation. That passive alone already reduces the cost of it. Power of the Light increases our ulti gain by using it, and of course our abilities are cheaper because that helps with our sustain. It's very, very important to get that passive. Restoring Light. This isn't actually essential. There's a couple of abilities we're never going to use, but the ones you are going to use are these. For example, here, increases the healing effects from your Restoring Light abilities by 12%, based on the proportion of the severity of the target's wounds. Now, of course, this is for us or other group members as well. If we repent the dead body, we heal, and we heal other people too. That passive does increase the strength of it, so you want to make sure you get that. This one is not relevant to us because we're not using any of those abilities. This one also is irrelevant because we're not using any of the abilities. We are using Restoring Aura, but we're using a different morph of it, and it doesn't have a duration, so this doesn't count. Don't need it. But we do need this. If you resurrect an ally, they come back with 100% more health than they would have done in the past, and if you do resurrect them, you res 20% faster than any other class in the game. So if someone goes down, pick them up. You're the one that can do that really, really fast. Also, for resurrecting people, you have 50% chance to fill a soul gem rather than just spending one, so it might cost you nothing. It's really, really, really nice passive indeed. Dual wield, this is essential. Get every single one of these. You get execute damage, meaning that your dual wield abilities and your lights and heavies from your dual wield do more damage under 25% health on the target, which is really nice. You get extra weapon damage on your offhand, which is really, really nice because obviously the offhand does less damage, but now it's kind of pushing up a bit. You reduce the cost of the abilities, which of course is essential because we don't want to over spam and run out of juice. It gives you a damage bonus while enemies are immobilized, disorientated, or silent, or stunned, which is really handy as well. And of course, we're using 1 axe, 1 dagger. I know visually you can see 2 axes, but that's a costume part or an outfit choice. I'm actually using 1 dagger and 1 axe. We get an 8% chance to put a bleed on the enemy, which goes through resistances. 6 second, 12k dot, almost 13k. It's very, very strong indeed and does proc a hell of a lot. And of course, we have not far off of like 5% extra crit chance for using a dagger. So we use 1 of each and it's really, really nice. You can use any combination of weapons that you want, but personally, through all the testing, this has actually stood out on top so far. So I really, really like these. Bow, make sure you get all of these passive abilities. Of course, the further away you are, the more damage you do. We are melee ranged, but some fights mean that you have to move around a lot. And of course, any damage that you do from range with your bow will be increased. Increases our crit chance while on that bar, so really, really nice if you're on the bow bar. Reduces the stamina cost of those abilities. They are expensive, you want to get the cost down. If you do a light or heavy attack, you will increase the damage of your bow abilities by 5% for 5 seconds. Each light attack or each heavy attack stacks up, increasing it by a further 5% and stays for 5 seconds. So if you stack this up to 5 and keep light attacking, you'll keep it, and it'll just keep reapplying the time. We're not going to be doing that as such. We are not a bow build. We're not going to get the full bonus out of that because our rotation doesn't allow us to do so. If you spam 5 light attacks, all your dots are going to run off and you just wasted loads of time. You got no extra damage really. We are going to use 2 or 3 light attacks on our back bar rotation while on the bow. So we are going to get a bonus. It's not going to be the maximum, but we are going to get a bonus nonetheless. And the main key point is you must make sure you don't miss those light attacks if you really want to get that bonus damage. Hasty retreat, of course, I need 1 more skill point to max this, but put it to 5 seconds instead of 2.5. If you dodge roll, like this, you get a speed bonus, so you run faster. It's really, really good for evasion. Lovely in Maelstrom as well. Really, really handy. So get all of those passives as soon as possible. Light armor is not essential. This one is for 5 pieces. This one is for 5 pieces. You don't need these. These give you minor bonuses to recovery and reduction to cost. We're not using any magic abilities, so these 2 are irrelevant. If you want the spell resistance for using 1 piece of light armor, then of course you can get this, but you don't have to. We're using 1 light, 1 heavy, and 5 medium. Every single one of these increases crit chance, increases your stamina recovery, and reduces the cost of your abilities based on how many pieces you're wearing. Also reduces the cost of sneak, which is irrelevant for PvE unless you're hiding and stealing stuff, but handy anyway, so get this. And of course, increases your damage, your weapon damage, by 12% for having 5 pieces worn. And this one here reduces the cost of dodge roll, and of course sprint and movement speed is altered as well. The sprint and movement speed is not that important unless you're kind of running around in Cyrodiil or just want to get around dungeons quick, whatever. But the one thing that is important here is of course the dodge roll reduction cost, because we are going to dodge roll because that's how we avoid damage. We're not a magicka, we don't have a damage shield. The only thing we have is deadly cloak to get off the AoE damage. The rest of it is blocks and dodges, so you do want to get the cost down. Get those as soon as possible. Heavy armor, again here, physical resistance if you want to, we're using 1 piece. Return from resources if you get hit, again 1 piece isn't massive, but if you want to, go for it. But I would highly recommend getting this. The 1 piece does give us a 2% bonus to max health, and that makes us less squishy. Vampire, yes we're a vampire, 10% increased magicka and stam recovery, helping for our sustain. And of course our survivability here reduces the damage taken by up to 33%, while you are under 50% health. So the lower your health, the less damage you take. Do you take more damage from fire as a vampire? Yes. Are you exempt from this mitigating bonus for having that at the same time? No, you're not. You still mitigate damage while very, very low health, whether it's fire or not. However, most people are scared of fire because they listen to secondhand information and think that vampire is really bad. The bonuses weigh out the negatives. But here's a key point to remember. Most fire in the game, especially in trials and stuff, will probably one-shot a DPS anyway, whether they're a vampire or not. We mitigate all damage at low health, and fire can be avoided in certain situations. Big AoE like this, step out of it. Very, very simple. Just don't stand in it. Big line of fire aiming across the floor, move out of the way, move back in again. Very simple. Fireball aimed straight at you. Block it or dodge roll it. 9 times out of 10 people who die in fire are not dying because they're a vampire, they're dying because they're standing in stupid. Don't stand in it. If you can get used to that, vampire will not be a problem for you. Even stage 4. All of my characters except for 1 werewolf I think are vampire stage 4, and I do not struggle with them. In fact, there have been many points in time where I've hit 1% health and survived, and that is because of the undeath passive. If that undeath passive wasn't there, I'd have took more damage at 1% and I would have been killed. Fighters Guild, essential stuff of course. Intimidating Presence reduces the cost of your Fighters Guild abilities. We are using them, we want the cost down. Increases the weapon damage by 3% for each Fighters Guild ability slotted. Why is Circle of Protection on our bar? Not only for this extra bonus, because we've got so much sustain we can actually protect our group and give them recovery at the same time, but because, while it's there, it gives us 3% increased weapon damage just for being there. We're not using it for anything else. We may as well get a passive bonus. Same goes for Beast Trap. This also gives us 3%, and remember we get the 5% from this for being on the bar. We also get a further 3% for this. So 3 here, 3 here, 3 here. 9% across the board. Absolutely brilliant. Banish the Wicked is essential. Any undead, Daedra, or werewolf that you kill will give you 9 ultimate back, so we can use our ultimate sooner. That's if you get the kill and blow. Also, any Fighters Guild abilities that you do use that do damage have an increased 20% damage to undead, Daedra, or werewolves, and I'm getting hit by an imp. Goodbye. Always repent the target. Now, Undaunted, if you take a synergy, you get 4% max health, stamina, and magic back. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand that that obviously keeps you alive, and it keeps your resources up, which means your sustain is up, and you are not doing nothing or running out of juice stupidly or dying. The more synergies you take, the more of this you can take advantage of. Every single synergy in the game is beneficial, whether it's damage, protection, healing, or whatever. It's all beneficial. Don't leave it on the ground for somebody else. Pick the bloody things up. Increases your max health, stamina, and magicka by 2% per armor type. We are wearing 3 types: heavy, light, and medium. 1 light, 1 heavy, 5 medium. So one of 2 types and 5 of another. So we get the full bonus. 2% for each type, 6% across the board. So we have massive health and massive stamina and all that good stuff. Really important. Imperial, yes, of course, our race is Imperial, which is why our health is so bloody high. 12% increase. That does stack with Undaunted. That does stack with heavy armor. We have a lot of health. We are a stamina DPS build, and we have 19.5k health without Eben and without a Warhorn. That is insane. 10% increased max stamina, which means we have a huge stamina pool. We have exactly the same as a red guard, so the output is exactly the same. We just don't have the recovery bonus, but our rotation covers our sustain anyway. It's absolutely fine. And red diamond, of course, melee attacks, meaning your lights and heavies. The more health you have, obviously, the more you get back, because you have a 10% chance to heal for 6% of your max health. That's very, very strong, and it doesn't have a cooldown. It fires off all the time. Really, really nice, especially alongside of our blood craze and, of course, our repentance if we need to use that. Really, really handy. Now, alchemy. I would highly recommend getting this to medicinal use level 3 as soon as possible. There is a link in the description for an alchemy guide showing you just how to get there really, really fast. But this increases the duration of our potions. Now, the potions we're using are in here, and they are Essence of Weapon Power. Gives us Major Brutality, increasing our weapon damage by 20% for 47.6 seconds. Major Savagery for 47.6. We've got that covered anyway with Bite and Jabs, but we'll take it because it's on the potion. And we get Major Endurance for 47.6 seconds as well, increasing our Stam Recovery by 20%. Now, also it gives you a boost of stamina, so you get 7.5 when you actually pop the potion. But if you look at carefully, the cooldown is 45 seconds, but the duration of the potions is longer. Meaning we can actively keep this potion up 100% of the time with no negative effects whatsoever. If you don't have medicinal use, these last 36 seconds instead of 47. So obviously you'll have gaps in your recovery and your bonuses and your damage and all that good stuff. So get medicinal use as soon as possible. Now I'm going to go over the gear. First of all, if you're using the old setup, don't worry, it is still just fine. It performs very, very well. And even though Sunderflame got a change, it does still work effectively. Now, this before used to give us a physical debuff by about 3.3k on the target that you hit with a heavy attack with a small amount of fire damage applied to it as well. That's been reversed slightly. Now, the fire damage is very, very high if you initiate a heavy attack, but of course the resistance debuff is lower. It's an actual minor fracture and minor breach, which is the same as your power of the light. However, if you're heavy attacking a lot, you can keep this up 100% of the time. I tested this a hell of a lot, and to be honest, it's still very, very solid based on the way that they've flipped the stats around, but you don't have to use this because, of course, now I'm using a stronger setup. Again, if you have got this already and you want to stick to it, you're more than welcome to. You do apply a debuff for the group. It's quite small, but it does still count. Now, we're actually using, and if you've seen Murder at Fire, you'll be familiar with this set already, Red Mountain. 5 pieces of Red Mountain. 2 weapons and 3 jewelry. Now, if you don't have the Maelstrom weapon, you can go with Red Mountain on the back bar as the bow, or a crafted one. It's entirely up to you. If you go on the bow, that means you're going to swap bars, and although these are 2 pieces here, you'll switch to the back bar and lose the bonus. But if you have a bow, then you keep it, because bows are worth 2 pieces now. So that's a choice you can make. Maelstrom weapon here, if you can get it. Very, very powerful. If not, like I said already, Red Mountain or crafted. Now, the dagger and the axe are very specific. I want those 2 weapons, but it doesn't matter which order they're in. You can have an axe here, a dagger here, or an axe here and a dagger here. But one thing you must pay attention to is the Nirnhoned weapon must be in the main hand. Otherwise, you won't get a big enough bonus. In the main hand, you get 200 increased weapon damage. In the offhand, if it's Nirnhoned, you only get about 50. Infused in the offhand to make sure that we have a weapon and spell damage glyph, which is stronger and has a lesser cooldown. Literally, the second that this runs out, you can reapply it again. It's very, very strong. Poison on there, weapon and spell damage on the other. Poisons we're using on the back bar are made with Alkahest, Nernroot, Nightshade, and Fleshfly Lava. They have 2 poison dots on them, which are very, very strong. And of course, poison can proc a poison status effect, giving you a 6-second damage over time ability as well on top of this. So they're really, really powerful. I would highly recommend making these if you can afford the stuff. Alkahist is easy to get hold of. You should have thousands of it already just by picking everything up. The other materials, some are expensive, some aren't. Keep your eyes peeled for bargains on the market. Hopefully you can get some of these made. Now, we're using 2 Stormfist as well. I will put a link to the dungeon guide in the description for Tempest Island if you're not familiar with that dungeon, or if you're having trouble with the last boss. I explain exactly how to do it very, very clean and much, much easier than most of the pugs you're probably having. But you need helmet and shoulders of Stormfist. They come from the Undaunted chest, of course. Light on the shoulder or the helmet, doesn't matter which, or heavy on the shoulder or the helmet, doesn't matter which. But as long as you've got one of each, they give the same resistances in whichever order they're in. As long as you've got one heavy, one light, you're good to go. However, if you've got 2 medium and you're using the next set, which I'm now going to get to, you can craft different weights. So you can still manipulate it anyway and make sure you've got 5 medium, 1 heavy, and 1 light. The next set is, of course, Hundin's Rage. So, Hundin's Rage can be crafted. Jewelry can be crafted as well, so you're not at a loss if you can't get Red Mountain Jewelry. Don't worry, you can get someone to make you some of this. Now, this gives us weapon crit, stamina, and weapon crit, and then again a flat weapon damage bonus, which is really, really nice. Red Mountain, if you're not already familiar with it, does apply kind of a fireball that comes out of a volcano in the ground once every 2 seconds if you're lucky, based on weapon abilities. So if you're using Deadly Cloak, then of course that can fire it. If you're using Blood Craze, that can fire it. If you're using Volley, so can that. And if you're using Poison Injection, so can that. Any ticks of these damage abilities will proc it if you're lucky, and it can fire like hell. So make sure that you keep your rotation clean. Make sure those weapon abilities are firing. Your lights and heavies can also affect it as well. It's really, really nice. Now, what you can do to change things out. First of all, robust on all the jewelry. You don't need Bloodthirsty. I've tested it out. The amount of flat passive damage that you get with 3 robust on this particular build is absolutely fine. If you sacrifice it a little bit and then plug it with Bloodthirsty, you end up getting the same damage. It's not really worth it. But if you want to, you can. It's entirely up to you. But robust on all with weapon damage on everything. Now, Hundins can be swapped out if you want to optimize a little bit more. If you want to push those extra numbers and you're already more than comfortable with this, you can swap Hundin's Rage for Briarheart. Briarheart can be found in Hrothgar, and it can also be found on the market if you're lucky. Now, it looks almost the same as this, with a crit, stamina, and crit bonus, and then a weapon damage bonus at the end, but the weapon damage bonus is higher. It does have a small cooldown on it. It does proc off of your crit damage, but at the same time, any damage that you do once a second will heal you. So it's actually a very, very nice sustain or health sustain set, as well as a damage bonus. So you can either take the flat damage here all the time, or you can take the Briarheart proc. Your call. Really, really nice indeed. However, there are still other options. If you want to use Reliquant, because I know it's obviously very, very popular at the moment, yes, you can use it. Yes, you will get more damage flat on a single target if you can use it properly. That is a very, very valid point, by the way. If you can use it properly. There's a lot of people out there using it on a skeleton and getting stupid high numbers, and yes, of course, it does that. But during mechanics, if you cannot keep up a light or heavy attack on the main target at least once every 5 seconds, you are wasting your time putting the set on. You need to make sure that you are personally capable of keeping that uptime on the target. Otherwise, you may as well use something else, because you're losing too much damage, because the proc, stacking up to 20 stacks, has to reapply again from the very beginning. One more very important set that you can use is Alkosh. Now, I know there's lots of people screaming about this, and for God knows what reason, they seem to think that it's not a DPS set. It bloody well is, because look, crit chance, minor slayer increasing your damage, weapon damage, which contributes to your damage, and then a synergy bonus. If you take a synergy, you will do physical damage in a single hit in area of effect to every target in front of you. Then on top of that, this actually goes a lot higher when you purple or gold it with all your buffs on and stuff, but it ends up being between a 16 to 18k physical damage over time effect for 10 seconds, also to every single target in front of you, based off of your max stats. Also, it reduces the physical and spell resistance of every single enemy you just hit for 10 seconds. Now, of course, synergies are on a 20-second cooldown. But if you're actively taking between 3 to 5 synergies, you will constantly reapply this physical and spell resistance debuff. It doesn't stack, but it reapplies it. But something that does stack. These physical hits will be reapplied every time you hit a synergy, but the damage over time stacks. So every single synergy you take while a previous damage over time effect is active on the targets in front of you, another dot will be added on top. So if you're sitting there getting an average of around 40k with this particular setup, and you slap Alkosh on it and take loads of synergies, even before buffs, you can actually go straight up to 50. It's very, very strong, but it does take practice. It aims, you need to make sure that you take a synergy aiming at the direction you want it to go, because it's a frontal AoE. It's no good taking a synergy here and expecting to hit this little pig behind me. Won't work. Aim it at a big massive enemies, take the synergy, reposition yourself if you have to without killing the group to take each individual synergy while keeping your rotation up. If you can manage that, if you can, then you're going to do very, very well with that set in place of this instead. But remember, those are options. You don't have to do that. If you want to keep this as simple as it can be and stick to the rules of it being called the Simplar in the first place, Stormfist, Hunter's Rage, Red Mountain, good to go. Very, very simple. Hopefully that wasn't too complicated of an explanation, but keep an eye out for the non-fused Dragon Knight video coming soon, the advanced DK. I go over it in a lot more detail in that one. Now, what do we got next? Champion points, of course. Champion points. These can be changed depending on the fight, but I like a nice across-the-board resist setup. So 56 points into here, reducing direct damage by 20%. 64 and 64, reducing all physical poison, disease, and elemental damage by 13%. And of course, 19% reduction to any damage over time abilities of these damage types. 15 points into here to give us increased healing received. That means from our lights and heavies, from our red diamond passive, our vigor, our repentance, any heals that anyone heals us with, anything. So that goes up, but above all, 10 points in this tree will give you this. You res faster. While you're resin, you take less damage. Really, really important passive for all classes, not just the Templar. 28 points into Warlord, making sure that our break free costs less, because we are going to have to break free, and we use the same resource pool as we do our damage with. We want to make sure it's cheaper. Tenacity, meaning if we heavy attack, we do get stamina back, but we get more of it. Mooncalf, increasing our stamina recovery. Again, we're sitting at 1k stamina recovery. We've got quite a lot. It's really, really nice. Don't waste any more points in here, because if you spend 25 points in here, it will give you 1%. The next point, I know it says 14.07, but decimal points don't count. You don't get anything. It doesn't count until you hit the next percent. So if we, for example, use 25 points in here for 1% increase, we'd only have 3 points in here. We're getting nothing from it. It'd be rubbish. So use your points wisely. You hit diminished returns, use them somewhere else. 72 points into tumbling to make sure that we reduce the cost of our dodge rolls. We don't have a magic shield. We have mitigation for AoE damage, of course, but a lot of the time we're going to be blocking and dodge rolling. Make sure that you get your dodge roll cost down. We don't want to run out of stamina, otherwise we can't hit. Another thing to note, of course, our ultimate is cheap, but every synergy you pick up, especially for those Alkosh users, 2 ultimate returned for picking up a synergy, and 4% to all your resources returned for picking up a synergy in the Undaunted passive. You can see where these all line up really nicely. Nothing in here. 31 points in Master at Arms for our direct damage abilities, and 13 points into our lights and heavies, which also do scale off of these as well. They both work together because they're direct hits. 56 into Thaumaturge. We are using a lot of damage over time, but we're also using a decent amount of direct damage as well, so it balances those out quite nicely. 51 points into Precise Strikes. We do want to crit, that's why our crit is high, and we do want to make sure our crit damage is boosted, especially since we're using a Beast Trap and Templar passives anyway. 35 points into Penetration, meaning that we ignore 3k of the physical resistance of the target. So that's our penetration straight off. Add a taunt to that. That then stacks up to nearly 8k. You can see where I'm going with this. The more penetration bonuses, buffs and debuffs you get, the more damage you can do on the target. 35 is a really nice base for us. We don't have any more in our sets, but you can change your Munderstone from the Thief to the Lover if you realize that you're maybe not hitting the numbers you really want to, especially in a dungeon. Trials, not so much because you've got a lot more buffs and debuffs, but in dungeons or solo, if you want to switch to the Lover, you're more than welcome to, and it won't be a whole cheesing a build type thing. It will actually benefit you a lot because you'll go through their resistances a lot better than you would if you had no buffs at all. So make sure that you kind of make that choice for yourself. Mighty, of course, you want to make sure that you got 13% into here to make sure that your flat physical poison disease damage is improved. Also, a small point, remember the vampire passive, the lower the health, the less damage you take. If you go to 20% health or lower, you're not necessarily going to die because you've got the vampire passive keeping you buffed up and making sure you don't take that much damage. If you do hit less than 20%, having all these points in this tree, of course, you do get more ultimate gain. So you get major heroism for 8 seconds, so you can spam that ulti again. Now, I'm going to go over the rotation, but I'm going to do this in my house so we can use the skeleton to demonstrate it. It's a lot easier that way. Okay, so rotation-wise, I said this was the Simplar for a reason. The gear is easy to acquire, except for the other stuff I spoke about, which you can do if you're a little bit more experienced. But the rotation is very simple in comparison to lots of others out there. The front bar, we're going to have 2 light attacks and 3 heavies in a specific order. And we're also going to have our main spammable, and we're going to keep our dots and buffs up. So, first of all, when you enter a fight, you want to make sure that your deadly cloak is on. That will instantly protect you from AoE damage, and of course you've got some damage proc on already. If you stand near the target, you'll see that that pops once every 3 seconds, which is quite nice. Now, keep that up. Beast Trap first of all, so that you've got that crit bonus and your first dot firing. Switch to your back bar. This is where it starts. You go with volley first, under the target. Then you light attack, poison injection. Light attack again. There's a lot going on, I know. Power of the light, swap bars. That's all you do on your back bar. So, volley, light attack, poison. Don't miss those light attacks. Light attack, power of the light, swap. Now on your front bar, there's a lot of firing, I know. Light attack, deadly cloak. Then, heavy attack, jabs. Heavy attack, jabs. Heavy attack, blood craze. Light attack, beast trap, swap. So, light attack at the beginning with deadly cloak. Then heavy jabs twice, heavy rend and slashes or heavy blood craze, and then light attack beast trap at the end. Start again. Now, every second rotation, you are going to be able to fire off your ultimate. When you get to that stage, instead of volley, light, poison, light, power, swap, you do exactly the same as that, but instead of swapping at power of the light, you light attack ultimate swap. So it will be like this. Volley, light attack poison, light attack power, light attack ultimate swap. Very, very simple. Make sure you get those light attacks in. So, volley, light attack, poison, light attack, swap. With the power of the light on. When you get around the next time, volley, light attack, poison, light attack, power of the light attack, ultimate swap. You can do that every second rotation so long as you don't balls up your rotation. Everything is timed just right so that when you're on your back bar, you'll hit your poison injection, your light attack, you'll hit power of the light, it will give you 3 ultimate, filling the 72 that you need for the ultimate, and then you can fire it and swap bars. Remember, Dawn's Wrath ability will give you ultimate, 3 ultimate in fact, once every 6 seconds. Just using this will do it. So it times really, really well with your ultimate on the back bar and gives you just enough room to get everything in. Now, of course, if it's a shit situation and you want some protection, you can put this down, but you don't have to. Now, I'm going to go over this very, very quickly again, and then I'll show you a demonstration on the skeleton so you can have an idea of what to expect with this particular setup, not including any alterations that I've already gone over. Any alterations that I've gone over, the Briarheart one, for example, will give you about 1k extra DPS. Not massive amount, but you will heal. The Alkosh and Reliquin, 2 variations. Reliquin will push you to about 44, 45 if you're lucky, and Alkosh, depending on the amount of synergies that you've got running, will actually push you in the region of 50 plus. Depends on what you've got available at the time. Make sure you take the synergies if you're using that set, however. So, we're going to put Deadly Cloak on first, Beast Trap in, swap. Volley, light, poison, light, power, swap. Light, deadly, heavy, jabs. Heavy, jabs again. Heavy, blood craze, light, beast trap, swap, ultimate rotation. Volley, light, poison, light, power, light, ulti, swap. Light, deadly. Heavy jabs, heavy jabs, heavy blood craze, light, beast trap, swap. Start again. That's all you've got to do. Now, a key point for animation cancelling, I know it's very, very difficult to get on point with that with some people, but I'm just going to explain briefly how this works on this particular setup. Beast Trap has a long cast duration. If you swap bars as soon as you press it, no duration, you're fine. No, it's not the cast, it's more the animation itself and the arming of the trap. So you want to make sure that you swap instantly to save you some time. On the back bar, same applies. Power of the Light does this. He has an animation. Takes time, doesn't it? But it's not a cast time, it's just animation. So if it's got 0 cast time, hit it and swap straight away. You see I'm on my front bar automatically. Same applies with the ultimate. So if we use an ultimate, this particular one, we can actually apply it and swap bars instantly. So hit swap. I'm on the front. See what I mean? Now, jabs and blood craze can also be cancelled with a heavy. Most people think you have to fire the heavy and stop halfway just so you glow green, so that's when you get your stamina back, enough in time to put the jabs in. That's false. You don't have to do that. If you hold heavy attack and hit the ability mid-heavy attack, or just as soon as you press it, it will actually queue it up. The game will remember, and it will fire when the heavy attack is finished. So if I hold this heavy and press jabs now, jabs have been pressed. It does it for me. I don't even need to let go of heavy. So for your front bar rotation, hold heavy attack after Deadly Cloak has been activated. Hold it. And in this order, listen very carefully. I'm just going to hold the heavy attack the whole time. Hit jabs now. Hit jabs now. Hit Blood Craze now. And then let go. It will queue those abilities up. So here, instead of doing a full swing like this, you actually stop halfway without letting go of the button. Look at the button itself. You can see I'm pressing it. You see it presses in. It will do it itself and you'll still get the full resources back. Anyway, hopefully that wasn't too complicated. It is meant to be simple, and I'm showing you a way to make it simple, but it's hard to kind of take in first of all. Hopefully that will just about cover it. Anyway, here's a demonstration on the skeleton. So hopefully that helped, hopefully that wasn't too boring, hopefully you now have a better understanding of how to approach this particular build, hopefully it's simple enough for the title to actually make sense, and of course hopefully you have a lot of luck as far as RNG is concerned acquiring the loot that you want to be able to achieve this particular setup. Anyway, first of all, thank you all very, very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support, and if you are not subscribing on YouTube, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support the channel outside of YouTube, there are some links in the description for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website XynodeGaming.com, where the written guides are for the builds and the dungeon guides, the All About Mechanics series. And of course there's a forum there just for XynodeGaming supporters if you want to take part in that. And don't forget, of course, I am streaming on Twitch now quite a lot. In fact, every day, 10 PM UK time onwards. So come by and say hi when I'm streaming as well. Once again, thank you all very much indeed for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.